Welcome to Heart, where we break the silence, bridge the gaps, and bring real conversations about mental health to the forefront. I'm your host, Lee Yaffe, founder and director of The Long Short Road. I'm so grateful and excited to welcome Yonah Kohn to the show today. Hi, Yonah.
Hi, Leah. I'm doing great. How are
I-
you?
I'm good, thank God. I'm really grateful to have you here, and thanks for taking the time.
Of
Uh,
course.
I wonder before we start if you could introduce yourself and who you are to the audience.
So, my name is Yonah Kohn. I am 43 years old. I am a father of four beautiful children, three daughters and a son. I grew up in Borough Park, went to yeshiva all my life over there. High school, I went to yeshiva in New Jersey. Then I went to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. Got married, worked in different jobs, retail, finance, and I now work as a peer counselor or peer specialist at a psychiatric hospital in Brooklyn, Kings County Hospital. And, the subject of suicide awareness, suicide education, and the promotion that it's okay to talk about it is something that I've been passionate about now for about 10 years.
Mm.
I'll be happy to answer more questions down the road.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that snapshot and and I know there's so much in between, but as I'm hearing you, I'm like the trend, the line of how your life went from growing up in Bar Park to now being a peer counselor in a psychiatric hospital, like what a journey. So I
Yes.
giving us that snapshot and I'm looking forward to getting into it. I'm curious then if we could go back. I would like to go back to the beginning, but before that, actually,
Mhm.
you said that you've been, passionately advocating for suicide prevention for the last 10 years. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how did that start for you? Like what led you? Because I know, like, as someone who's like my whole life is suicide prevention, it's not something that you like, it's not a light thing to choose to advocate for. So what led you to advocate for this very necessary and very stigmatized topic?
So, I mean, I can go on for hours to answer this, but
I know I just gave you like
I,
a huge heavy question.
I will give the audience a break. So
Okay.
basically, it's because of my own lived experience with suicide. I have lost people to suicide as early as in my childhood days, and when I was in yeshiva in elementary
In
school.
Borough Park?
Yeah,
Wow.
I have. I made an attempt when I was 14 years old, and this is going back now almost 30 years ago. I've made attempts less than 10 years ago.
Wow.
So to me, I'm a multiple suicide attempt survivor. Thankfully, I've been suicidal ideation free for about 2 years now, approximately. But one of the things I noticed throughout the times where I was struggling, whether I was attempting, thinking about attempting, or just the daily ideation of waking up, I wish I didn't wake up, that sort of thing, was I felt alone,
Mm.
as if I was the only one struggling like this. And it wasn't about logically whether I knew or did not know other people. I felt alone.
Right.
And when I started opening up to people and when I started having conversations with people, it was like a huge burden lifted off my shoulders because I didn't feel alone. Too. Now that didn't take away from my ideation, but it made it easier to talk about it.
Right.
And if the easier it was to talk about it, the less likely I was actually going to ramp up my ideation to active suicidality. How many people are suffering from suicidal ideation that they feel alone
Yeah.
for whatever reason, whether it's stigmatized, whether it's ashamed, whether they're embarrassed, whether it's a community function that we don't talk about such things, whatever the case is.
Mm.
So that for me is sort of what really prompted this. About 10 years ago, I had what I now recognize was a panic attack. At that point, I had no connection with what that is.
Mm.
And that sort of like lit a flame once I got a little bit of help. Yeah. So to me, it's the feeling of not being alone and that it's okay to talk about it.
I'm like taking in everything you're saying and just there's so many pieces there that I want to ask you about. And first of all, thank you for sharing. And I appreciate, and we've spoken about this before that, as being an advocate for this doesn't mean that we're not human and that we don't struggle, right? And like you said, you had a attempt less than 10 years ago, right? So even in the
Less
time,
than five.
right? So even in the time that you've been advocating for suicide prevention and for talking about it and for helping people feel alone, that hasn't stopped the struggle for you,
No, that
right?
definitely did not stop the struggle for me. The reason why I believe I have not struggled the last couple of years with ideation is not because I'm too embarrassed to talk about it and I'm secretly, feeling suicidal. No, that's not the case. It's because I talked about it ad nauseam again and again and again and again and again and again until I felt completely not alone.
Mm,
So now, if I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling depressed, I now can reach out to people,
mm,
whether it's a therapist, whether it's a support group, whether it's individual people, friends, or whatnot,
right,
and it doesn't have to get to suicidal ideation.
right.
And that is another thing I'm passionate about. It's I for so long I let whatever feelings I had, bubble and develop, and then it became suicidal ideation.
Hmm.
And I'm like, why are we waiting until it gets to that?
Yeah,
Now, there is no shame if someone is feeling that, and of course they need support, but there are things we can do to prevent that from happening.
right. 100%. And I said to someone the other day, I think we've made a lot of progress in society as a whole of like helping get to that, help people before they get to that place. I still think we have a long way to go though.
What, whenever I hear this is just my personal take, and I know this is not coming from you, but whenever I hear we have made progress, and I get from people, okay, so are you going to stop advocating now? Like, are you going to be quiet now about it? And I'm like, we made progress, but do you really think like we're done making progress?
Right.
And how many members from the Orthodox community that I come from are still dying by suicide?
A lot.
And
Yeah.
how many are dying because they do not feel like they are able or allowed to talk about it?
Yeah.
To me, I would love to be able to say I'm going to stop talking about it because that means there's no more need for advocating.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm not going to stop talking about it.
Yeah. Say it louder for the people in the back. No, because it really, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I would, I'll retire the day that there's no more work to do.
Yeah, very much true.
Right? Do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your story and your history and what you experienced and went through that led to your suicidality or played a role in your suicidality? Obviously,
Sure.
the details that you feel comfortable with, yeah.
So I was sexually abused and raped as a child
Mm,
in the yeshiva shul camp that I went to, and that wasn't what actually led to the suicide attempt, but that is what changed me dramatically,
mm,
right? Um, I was just going through it, just barely holding on, barely surviving, but I transferred out of the yeshiva system that I was in, and I went to another yeshiva, and you know the sexual abuse and rape stopped, and it was almost as if I can breathe again, because every moment was just, terror for me. Um, I don't know what happened in this yeshiva, but one of the things that I tried to do was I tried to make up for all the negative experiences I had in the last 2 or 3 years. And I was 14 at the time.
Mm,
And one of the things that I liked to do was perform.
mm,
One way of performing was being the Balkari in yeshiva.
mm,
And I had an affinity to be able to do that well, so I just naturally became the Bakari of the yeshiva. And I remember one time I was getting ready to learn the Torah on a Monday, and the principal asked for me to step aside of this yeshiva that I was in and ask someone else to learn. I was totally confused. I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, maybe it's his bar mitzvah parsha, So after shock with the principal called me down, he says, "You've been kicked out of yeshiva." And I'm like, for what?
mm,
I always say this, it's one thing if I knew I did something wrong and I got caught and, oh, now I got to suffer the consequences. But I genuinely did not know what I did knowingly wrong. Maybe I did something unknowingly wrong.
mm,
But if I did something unknowingly wrong, and so that prompted me, well, I had to go home because I had nowhere else to go. And I woke up my mother when I came home. And that was one of the worst things you can do to my mother, wake her up from her nap. I woke her up and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning and she was not expecting me to be home. She asked me, "Why are you home?" And I said, "I got kicked out of yeshiva." And now I had trouble with my previous yeshiva. And to my mother's and father's credit, they didn't know that I was being sexually abused and raped.
mm,
Sure, there were signs out there, but they didn't see it. I never held that against them. But I came home, and before I had the opportunity to try and explain anything, my mother just went off on me.
mm,
And at that point, I snapped. I had a breakdown.
mm.
I went into the kitchen and I was about to attempt to end my life right then and there.
Wow.
Um, the means that I was using to attempt to end my life was taken away from me, but the actual suicide attempt was never discussed.
Wow.
It's never acknowledged. I didn't go to a hospital. I didn't see a therapist. I didn't see a psychiatrist. The only concern was which yeshiva is you're going to go to next.
Mm,
That was it. And that got me thinking about suicide. And it got me thinking about a classmate I had in yeshiva who was was very sick with cancer. And, growing up in Borough in a Hasidic yeshiva system, payas is very important.
right.
And he lost all his hair,
Right.
to chemotherapy treatments. And he wore a wig, with hair and payas, which is very common. And he got into a kerfuffle, as I like to say, with a classmate of his. And they ended up getting into a physical altercation, and his wig fell off.
Mm,
And the kids mocked him mercilessly for this.
mm.
And he ended up taking his own life next month, Shabbos.
Wow.
And I started thinking about, because they said he died of cancer.
Right.
And I'm like, he didn't die of cancer. He
Mm,
had cancer, sure, but that's not why he died. And that's my first real experience with suicidal awareness. And I'm like, what is going on
mm,
that is causing young children to have these thoughts and feelings? And when our children, and I speak as a father, when my children are hurting, I want them to come to me.
right.
I would love for them to come to me, even if it hurts my feelings,
Yeah.
even if I'm in pain because of it. But what prompts so many young children to get to a point where they feel like the only option is to end their life, and they have no adults, no caretakers they can go to, and that's sort of, and I think for myself, once suicide became a viable option,
Mm,
it became a viable option for a long time.
mm,
So for the longest time, skipping a lot of pieces, obviously, but fast forwarding to adulthood, there were many times my ideation was, and this is something I wish more people understood, it was not that I wanted to die. It was that I wanted the pain to end.
yeah.
And I was dealing with so much emotional and physical pain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if the pain is not going to end, I'm going to die. Until I really started engaging in support. And it still took a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's I have no I just want to hold space for everything you shared. Like I don't want to jump right into the next questions and all that. But it really, something that's coming to mind is the fact that I hear a lot from people. Oh, this issue is new in our community. This is because of social media. This is contagion, da da da. Suicide and suicidal ideation has been happening in the Orthodox community for a long time.
It has, for me, a very interesting thing. When I'm no longer religious. I'm no longer, from, but I still have connections to the from community. My children are from, and I
Your
just put,
children are from.
yeah, I just put children on my son this past Friday. So
I
that
saw
was,
I saw on Facebook. So right, Mazel Tov.
you know, and so people ask me, so you think you talk about it because you're not from anymore? And I'm like, here's the thing. My not being from has nothing to do with this. That is a completely separate issue.
Right.
But what is a fact that people are still struggling with, because we've made progress, where it is now a little bit more safer to talk about it. It is a little bit less taboo. And I say more safer, less taboo, because it is still not completely safe and it is still
Definitely.
very much taboo.
Right.
But I think so they think, oh, this is a new problem. No,
Hmm.
this is a problem that we're now just beginning to actually acknowledge
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how do we tackle it.
Yep.
This is a problem. I'm in my early 40s.
Right.
I was in yeshivas 30 years ago, and
Right.
it was happening then.
Right.
I made an attempt 30 years ago,
Right.
and I'm not the only one, unfortunately.
Right.
So, I think what people, especially if they don't have any personal connection to it, meaning if they haven't struggled or they don't really know anyone who struggled or they're not an advocate, it's hard to believe, it's hard to accept
Yeah.
because, and I sort of shared this with someone once, because one of the common themes that people have always told me, and non-supportive people, I should say, well,
Mhm.
what about your kids? What about your kids? What about your kids? And I finally had the foresight to say, imagine for a moment, I'm a father who loves his children. I genuinely do. They are a pain in my rear end, but I love them dearly. But imagine that I'm in so much emotional pain that even my kids is not enough a reason for me not to end my life.
Right.
People can't fathom that.
No, they can't.
And I would say to them, that's a good thing. I don't want you to feel that kind of pain.
Yeah.
But because it doesn't make sense to them, it can't make sense to anyone else. And that's where I think a lot of the progress needs to happen.
100%.
Is if it doesn't make sense to you, or if someone doesn't struggle with suicidal ideation, I'm not, that's a good thing.
Right.
But don't deny it for other people who are to because you don't struggle with it.
Right. 100%. 100%. Okay, this is going to sound kind of a funny question. How do you
Sure.
not get angry, or maybe you do, when you see when people do respond in that? Because I know, for example, if I may just, I'll just tell you why I'm asking the question. At the time that we're recording this, we're about a week out. There was a very public suicide death of a young Lubavitch boy in Israel 2 weeks ago. People have a lot of opinions about it. People have a lot to say about it. And a lot of what I'm seeing from I mean, I'm sorry to call it out, but from every Orthodox community, Chabad, Litvish, Hamish, Hasidic, it doesn't matter. I'm seeing, and it's not everyone in every community, but I'm seeing a lot of loud voices that are responding to this death in a very upsetting, very shaming way. So I'm coming to this from a place of anger. So I'm curious, like, how do we educate people without, how can we help people see it this way? Because we have to have that paradigm shift. People keep asking me, what can we do? What we can do? We have to change the way we're talking about suicide. We have to change the way we're treating people who are struggling with suicide. Like there has to be a brain shift. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Yona?
Um, I was not aware of that young man's suicide until you made a post
Okay.
about it. And I avoided the blogs. I avoided the commentary because that would have made me angry.
Yeah.
Um, but I still very much get angry.
Yeah.
Very much get angry.
So maybe
But
that's the goal. We should be angry.
that is but again, you just said something that I've been saying for a while. And this is gonna sound really wrong, but I remember I was advocating in a different arena in the sexual survivor advocacy space, where someone was telling me, Yona, you're just so emotional about it. You're so angry and so upset. And I'm like, and I remember doing this, and I remember hitting my head, and I'm like, why do you think I'm angry?
Right.
Why do you think I'm emotional?
Right.
And then, so now I think about it in a little bit different way. There are people who I used to say who are ignorant, but I think I'm changing the word to unaware.
Yeah.
And there are many reasons why people are unaware.
Mm.
But when it turns into ignorance, then it becomes a problem.
Right.
Because unaware is just not knowing.
Right.
If someone is unaware and is willing to listen to someone like you and someone like me and the other advocates in the space and get educated,
Great.
I have
More
I've
power to them.
you
Yeah.
know that's great. But when people are choosing to stay ignorant,
Yeah.
I'm like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, and then if I was talking about this young man that passed away in Israel, I would say, how is the suicide of a 17-year-old young man who has not become an adult, never got married, never had kids, never raised a family, and these are all things that the Orthodox community and from community want
Right.
children to do. How are you not angry about it? Okay, if you're not angry, how are you not bothered by it?
Right.
How are you, I'm like, so the paradigm shift is I started not to engage in long debates with people who are choosing to stay ignorant
Yeah.
because the paradigm shift that you're hoping for, that I want, and that I think we all wish for, not only will it save a lot of lives, I truly believe that, but I also believe it'll start tuning out people who are choosing to stay unaware, in
Yeah.
other words, stay ignorant.
Right.
And that's how we create that paradigm shift. Now, the one thing that I would love that is, I just don't think is going to happen is it starts by having one conversation at a time,
Right.
one conversation at a time. Anyone who listens to this, episode, if you are struggling, reach out to someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen to all of that.
Of course.
Um, I want to shift directions for a minute, and I wonder if you could tell us about the necklace that you're wearing right now, where you got it, the event that you got it at, and you shared a story with me offline before, which I would like for you to share with, because I think that that speaks to the part of the paradigm shift that's necessary.
So I am a volunteer for the American Foundation Suicide Prevention New York City chapter. I serve on a couple of committees. I volunteer for them at different events. One of the biggest ways they raise money for suicide education, prevention education, and all that stuff is they have these walks.
Hmm.
Once a year, they have the overnight walk, and it's in a different city. This past year was in New York. Um, and they also have like local chapter walks. So this Sunday, I couldn't physically walk, but I volunteered at one of their tents. And these beads are where folks who come to the event, either volunteering or walk or staff or whatever, can wear as to what is their signify their connection to the cause. So they
Hmm.
had like 8 or 9 or 10 different color beads. And people who lost their child, people who lost a parent, people who lost a sibling, people who lost a friend, people who they themselves have struggled and attempted. And the truth is, I could wear several beads.
Mm.
But this year I chose just to wear one bead. And this was because to me, this teal bead, I don't know if you can see it
Mm.
clearly, is signifies to people that I have struggled with suicidality in the past. I have attempted, and I'm a suicide attempt survivor. And a woman approached me, and was just I don't know if she was a tourist or if she was just randomly there, and was asking me about it. And I said, "Yeah, this is a beads are you see people wearing different color beads." And she asked me, "Well, what is this?" And I said, "This is, I have attempted." And she asked me about method. And she asked me about methods, not just for the first time, but for the second time. And I politely told her that's not something I feel comfortable talking about.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, and the question is also getting me thinking. It's not just that we have to educate people that it's okay to talk about it, but there are things that are insensitive, that are
Right.
inappropriate.
Nuance to how we talk about it.
Right.
Right.
So, and I think the challenge is it's not just talking about it, it's how do we talk about it
Yep.
correctly? How do we talk about it in a safe way?
Yeah.
And and letting the person decide what they are comfortable or not comfortable talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's another challenge that we're facing is we're trying to advocate that it's okay to talk about it, but we also need to shift how we talk about it. And that I think is part of where you have a lot of people who are choosing to stay ignorant in this. This is just my opinion because they feel they know what to do. And the biggest I can have a 10-hour lecture on why we don't say the words committed suicide anymore.
Yeah.
But if I try to explain it, they don't want to hear it. Well, I'm talking about it. And like, so,
Right.
so this beat is sort of like I wore it today, not for any reason because I do work in a psychiatric hospital, to remind people that you can decide what you want and what you don't want to talk about it, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is to make it safe for you to feel heard and for you to be able to be listened to.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about your role as a peer support specialist?
So I So peer support specialist is a movement that's been going on for around 20 years. It essentially means someone with lived experience.
Right.
So I work for a clinic within Kings County called On Track New York. On Track New York is, well, let me backtrack. When we think of mental health support, we usually think of anxiety, depression, PTSD, things of that nature. But On Track New York is specifically focused for young people between the ages of 16 to 30 who are experiencing or are trying to recover from first episode psychosis.
Mm.
So I am essentially a person with lived experience, although I was never diagnosed with psychosis, but I've dealt with quite a bit of paranoia in my life, which is a subset of psychosis. And I just offer them that there is hope.
Wow.
And that's another reason, the biggest important reason why I'm willing to have this conversation beyond anything else.
Yeah.
It's not to personally vet my frustrations,
Right.
but when someone struggles with suicidal ideation as much as I have, the word hope is a laughable word. It's,
Right.
the word hope is not even like, no, it's not happening. And I'm like, there are people from my past who like, so Yonah, are you happy now? I'm like, I'm doing okay. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm sad, some days I'm angry. And I'm like, and my friend was like, that sounds normal. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I finally achieved living a normal life with the ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is hope.
There is hope. And I think also, there's such an important piece here, which is the relief that comes when we feel connected and we feel connected to someone and safe to be able to share, right? And being the person who's on the receiving end of that, right? That you're the one who's holding the support for them. Like, we underestimate how powerful that relational connection can be. And I talk about that a lot in our work at the Long Short Road. Like, do not underestimate what the power of relationship can do to help someone even just for that moment to tap into whatever hope they have internally. Like, if that's what keeps them going for another day, that's amazing.
And to add to that, I couldn't agree more. Um, I think of the word listening.
Hmm.
Many times when I speak to someone who's struggling with suicidal ideation, whether it's passive or active, right? They're coming with a whole host of serious problems
Yeah.
in serious situations. And that's not to poo-poo them, but there is nothing I can do in that moment to solve all of their concerns.
Yep.
There really is not. And if I try to, it would be disingenuous.
Yep.
So I think to myself, well, what can I actually do for them and actually follow through? I can actually listen to them.
Hmm.
Now, I am not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I am not a clinician, but you don't have to be.
Right.
You don't need a degree to listen to someone.
Right.
You don't need a degree to sit there and just hold space. You don't need a degree. I'm good for everyone who has a degree. I'm not trying to say don't get a degree, because we need social workers, we need psychiatrists, we need all that.
Of
But
course.
when it comes to listening,
Yeah.
you need to be human. You need to be a mensch.
Yep.
And and for those who are not sure whether they can listen or not, I think you can.
Right.
And here's the perspective that I would offer. As hard as it might be to anyone watching this or listening to this, to listen to someone struggle, share the struggle with suicidal ideation, that their life is so painful that death seems to be the better option, or they actually want to die.
Hmm.
Imagine how much more difficult it is for them. And take and use that moment to say, you know what, it's hard for me.
Right.
And I'm not telling anyone who listens in any way that it's not going to be hard,
Right.
but listen. And so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when I tell people that, first of all, I so appreciate the way you framed it because that's such an important part that people miss. When someone is in that much pain and they are really coming to you with many currently unsolvable problems, when we immediately go into problem solving mode, oh, you're struggling? Therapies, da, 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 and we start pulling rabbits out of hats, right? We're not doing that. We're doing that because it's more comfortable for us also because we're so uncomfortable with their pain that we have to like deflect. Um,
Well, furthermore, just to add to that, you know, uh, issue, you know, many times there are people who are feeling suicidal, have a therapist, have
right,
a psychiatrist, have a support team. So that's one thing to consider. But even if they don't,
right,
and yes, I do think if someone's struggling with suicidal ideation, a therapist is absolutely necessary. First of all, it takes time to find one.
mm-hmm,
It takes time to find one that you're comfortable with.
yep,
It takes time to find one that you trust.
yep,
And I'm not going to get political, but money is obviously a big factor.
yep,
Insurance, government insurance, private, all that.
yep,
So even if therapist is part of the solution, it's not the solution right now.
right.
Therapy, I think it took me 3 or 4 therapists to finally figure out what therapy is supposed to do for me.
Yep.
And it
Same.
wasn't, and it wasn't because they were bad therapists or good therapists. Was I didn't know what I needed.
Right.
So, so solutions are great,
Right.
but like you said, the solutions are not meant to help them. They're meant to help the person who's
Who's who's the listener?
right,
Right.
who's listening,
Think.
because they want to do what they can. And I'm like,
Right.
and the one thing I will add to that, that's a natural thing.
Sure.
That's that I'll use a phrase I haven't used in a while, Domkovskos. That is a really nice thing to do because it means they actually want to help the person. But really, if you want to help the person, do what you actually can.
Yeah.
Be honest with them. Just listen to them. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. People say to me sometimes when I tell them that they're like, that's it? That's the whole thing I'm supposed to do is listen. I'm like, you have no idea what you can do for someone by being that non-judgmental, space holding, and give them that support of really feeling seen and felt. That is, it's a, we
I
different people when we are witnessed in our pain and we are met as we are.
I actually have a different tactic. Just although I do agree with that.
Please share.
When people ask me, so all that is, I go, yes,
Right.
that's it. It absolutely is yes, and it's because to me, if I can get one person to listen to someone who's struggling, that's a chain reaction that's going to change.
Yeah.
And honestly, to me, what I really care about is saving lives and offering hope even when there doesn't feel like.
Right.
Because the other unspoken thing, and we might not have time to get into it today, is when someone dies of suicide, people sometimes tend to forget. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying you, obviously, but people sometimes tend to forget. There's a whole host of people around that. You know, with this young man, I don't know what his family life was like, if he had a mother or father, if he had siblings, if he was 17, I'm assuming he was in yeshiva, so he had
Classmates.
friends and classmates.
Yeah.
So this is an issue that doesn't just affect the individual,
Right.
it
It's a
affects a
ripple effect.
whole host of people.
Yeah.
And I've shared this on occasion, but one of the things that I've had to come to grips with is my attempts or my ideation has impacted my children.
Mm.
It's a hard thing to talk about. I don't talk about it often. And I've had to acknowledge that to them
Yeah.
because, you know, when I was really struggling, you know, and did I die? No.
Right.
Or was I close to death? I was uncomfortably close to death.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did commit suicide, what would that have meant?
Right.
I would not have been able to put on film for my son.
Right.
I would not have been able to, you know, have these, you know, in conversations with my children as they get older that feel more important. So listening does so much.
Yeah.
So if someone to anyone out there who's wondering, becoming an advocate is lovely. Supporting organizations that advocate for this is lovely. We all appreciate it. But if all you can do is listen, that's doing a lot.
Yeah.
Because what we really care about, I shouldn't speak for you, is saving lives.
I mean, speak for me. That's what I want. That's all I want. I want the, people to know that yeah, they're not alone and that they can feel safe to come as they are with their pain. Yeah. Oh, Yona, I could like talk to you forever. I like have so we'll have to do a part two. But my
Sure.
last question to wrap up is, um, do you have a message for anyone who's, I mean, I know you shared a message before, but for anyone who's listening right now who is struggling, do you have anything to say to them?
I've been asked this question quite a few times, and I think just based on my personal trajectory, I've answered this question in different ways, and it's not a contradiction. It's really based on how I'm feeling now. And how I am feeling now, I would say I want to acknowledge that talking about it, whether it's with a family member that you're close to, whether it's with a spiritual person, or Rebbe or Rosh Hashiva that you feel connected to, a therapist, or an advocate, or a fellow survivor, or any other, you know, hundreds of online support groups that are out there through AFSP or NAMI or different things. However you feel comfortable, that's okay.
Mm,
There's no right or wrong way. That's one thing. Number two, I acknowledge that it's a risk.
mm,
I acknowledge that there is shame and stigma, but I also want to share there is a lot of non-shame, non-stigma, compassionate understanding. And the risk, while scary, is worth it.
Yeah.
How do I know it's worth it? Because I don't think if I didn't take a risk, yeah, I'd be in a position today where, like you said, I grew up in Borough, see this little boy, and now I'm a peer counselor in a psychiatric hospital. That is not the trajectory I was on.
Right.
But at 43 years old, with all the ups and downs that life has to offer, I feel okay. I feel content. I still deal with, some of the struggles, but I'm happy. And that's not something I could have ever imagined. And when I think about all the times where I thought I may as well just give up, and I'm like, the reason why I didn't give up is the payoff is eventually going to come. Like the work that I'm doing is eventually going to come. And it's easy for me to say because now that I'm feeling the payoff, but the payoff will be there. But the only way you can get there is if you take that chance.
Yeah.
And I know it's scary, but it's worth it. And as much as there are, I haven't used this word in a while, nincompoops out there, there are a lot of good people such as yourself and others that are willing to listen. Listen compassionately, listen without judgment, listen without trying to fix you, listen to us without trying to change you. And yeah, listen, and the result.
Wow. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much for making
My
it. I'm so grateful we had this conversation. I'm so grateful for the work you're doing, and keep up the good fight. And I hope that we can really get to a point where, like, our services are not needed in this way because we've made the changes we need to see.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Amen.
Take care.
Yonah. Thank you for tuning in to Heart. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is hope and help is within reach. Since 2019, the Long Short Road has been walking alongside at-risk individuals, offering trauma-informed programs, a non-emergency hotline, and a community that fosters healing. No one has to go through this alone, and we are here for you. Discover how the Long Short Road is changing lives. Visit www.thelongshortroad.com or email us at info@thelongshortroad.com to learn more. You can be part of this mission. Sponsorship opportunities for Heart are available. Honor a loved one, support your community, and help us make mental wellness resources accessible to those who need them most. Until next time, remember, love and connection are the greatest healers. This is Lee Yaffe reminding you, hope is here, healing is possible, and you are never alone. Together, we're walking this long, short road to a brighter future.